And welcome back to Metal Labs. Today is Wednesday, March 20th.
Hmm.
Okay, March 20th. And I have a very special guest in, Dr. Magalai Brewer.
Thank you.
How are you today?
I'm doing very well. Thank you for
Okay.
having me.
All right. So you mentioned earlier today when we were just sitting here chatting
Hmm.
that you went to the gym this morning.
Yes,
Okay.
I did. I had a great workout. Health
Okay.
is very important.
All right. How important is those type of activities or hobbies for mental health for you?
Well, it's all part of self care.
All right.
We all
Yeah.
hear about self care. We're so busy taking care of other people, listening to
Yeah.
people's stories, helping them navigate through the challenges of life. We have to be our best selves to one another.
Yeah.
So taking care of ourselves is super important.
Yeah. It seems like you know, the idea of supporting clients who are coming in and they're crying and they're, sh- you know, um, going through
Hmm.
crisis, or even having staff that are working with this
Yeah.
population. You know, um, how is it? How did you uncover the fact that you needed to have, self care modality or test for yourself or activities?
So, I have been in the field for a very long time. And I remember, I've had a number of supervisors along the way, but I do remember one particular supervisor who I thought was pretty close to genius
All
in
right.
terms of her clinical acumen, but
Yeah.
also just the way that she would offer suggestions about how to take care of others while
Yeah.
at the same time as taking care of yourself.
Yeah.
And one of the things she told me, because I was working with foster care youth at the time,
Mm.
um, really tug at my heartstrings in
Yeah.
terms of what they were going through.
Yeah.
And what she told me one day is, you have to let go and let God.
Wow. Okay.
And that was very, very powerful
Yeah.
for me. I'm not necessarily a very religious person, but I'm very spiritual.
Got you.
And that was so helpful in terms of understanding that I serve a purpose
Yeah.
in this child's life for this 45 minutes.
Yeah.
And then after that, I have to let them go and
Yeah.
let whatever happens happen. And then they'll return. But I
Yeah.
just have to kind of let it go with the flow, let God handle things. And then at the same time, that's taking care of myself because
Yeah.
I'm not carrying all of that weight with myself.
Got you.
So,
So to become a therapist and to get into this space, is it something where you felt a calling towards it, or when did you realize like this was the right path for you?
I think, early on growing up, my parents are from Haiti.
Okay.
So I have a Caribbean background.
All right.
As in all families,
Yeah.
there's conflict and
Yeah.
challenges and strife,
Yeah.
and you have power dynamics
Yeah.
going on. And so I often took a back seat to all the conflicts going on, but I was
Mm.
often always called upon to help mediate.
Interesting.
And so I was always just observing,
Okay.
and fascinated by people's emotions and their
Yeah.
behaviors and,
Yeah.
just the way that we affected one another.
Yeah.
I didn't know back then I wanted to be a psychologist. I had no idea what that was.
Yeah.
But it was over, the course of I did my undergrad, then I did my master's in pastoral counseling, which
All
is
right.
like the religious spiritual
Yeah.
component of healing. That's when I realized this is really powerful. I really want to get deeper into that.
Okay.
And so then I went on to get my doctorate in clinical psych, and I said I'm going to start my own practice, and I'm going
I
to
love
help
it.
train, and I'm going to help supervise, and I'm going to help spread, the word and help heal.
All right. So you were a mediator in the house growing up.
Yeah.
Where are you in the birth order?
I'm the only girl and
Okay.
the youngest. I have two older brothers.
All right. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So did you have to break up any fights? And were the brothers tussling on the ground and
All
you
the
had to?
time.
Oh
Yeah, all the
gosh.
time. Yeah, definitely.
All right.
But it was interesting at the same time. It kind of pulled my heartstrings too because I
Yeah.
didn't want there to be conflict and
I
strife. So
get
I would
that.
do whatever I could to kind of
Yeah.
help with be the peacemaker
Yeah.
and help each other see one another's side of things
Yeah.
to help things to help smooth things out.
Yeah.
So
So there was this sense of being a mediator and being a sounds like almost like a healer as well. And then, I suspect listening to the story that there was an inspiration to move this towards a life path.
yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
so where'd you go to school?
So undergrad, I went to Loyola in
Okay,
Baltimore.
all right,
I majored in communications and journalism.
all right,
Again, not psychology.
Yeah.
But I was always interested in stories, and I think
Yeah.
that aligns with the communication journalism.
Yeah.
So I was always writing stories and interviewing people to get the stories.
All right.
And then after that, I took a year, kind of figure out what's going on in my life, and something called me to pastoral counseling at Loyola too.
Wow.
So I went through that program, and it was very, very enlightening, very transformational for me in terms of my own life. You know, looking at yourself and, you know, what you've been through and how to understand all of the challenges that you went through and how that brought you to who you were at that present day.
What would you say you discovered about yourself in the process of pastoral counseling? You know, was there ever a point where you considered like ministry, or, you know, because that's a pretty unique style.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think, you know, I discovered a lot of things about myself that were, you know, personal in terms of my own healing and why I gravitated to certain people.
Yeah.
You know, and why I wanted to fix certain people, quote unquote.
Yeah.
And then turning that to myself about, well, what do I need to fix within me? So that helped a lot. It was a lot of reframing back to, what are you doing out there? Let's redirect that to internal.
Wow.
What's going on with you internally, so you can really heal.
Yeah.
And be a better person and be more present to others.
Yeah.
So it was really, really, it was a lot of personal growth. And, you know, there was a big religious component to it as well. And I grew up Catholic, but, you know, it just helped me to kind of see and be, I think, more patient and compassionate with others who really gravitate towards like doctrinization, right? In religion. And just an understanding that, you know, people choose different ways to heal. And there's always, you know, some kind of secondary gain, I guess you can say, to the choices that they're making.
Yeah. There's some great historical figures who were philosophers who've put out or written pieces that say things like good warriors can conquer their opponent. Great warriors can conquer their opponent within themselves. You know, so just hearing you kind of mention that, you know, turning that work internal. You know, for those of us who are on that journey as well, what does that really look like? You know, like you hear oftentimes on, you know, of people's personal stories, in particular people who are successful, and they said, you know, I had to stop and look in the mirror, then I had to do that work on myself. What is the work on themselves?
The work never stops, for one thing.
Okay.
You know, the work never stops. And I think especially with the work I'm currently doing with psychedelics, it's really magnified my understanding about how not only does the work never stop, but the learning is coming from others more so than the books.
Wow. Okay.
So that never stops either. And it's always a new kind of learning because you're always with somebody new.
Yeah.
That's a different point in time.
Yeah. I'm really excited about asking my questions about psychedelics, in particular in the behavioral health space. But I want to continue forward from pastoral counseling into, you know, so once you graduated from there, what were you thinking? What were you going to do with that? And then what was the next journey in your career?
So after I finished my pastoral counseling degree, I really wanted to continue to get a doctorate in pastoral counseling. Okay. I was so enamored by it. Yeah. And I love philosophy. But my counselors told me don't do that. Because they just said, you know, you really need to choose a path that's going to allow you to make more money. And that's just more, not respected, but that people are more familiar with.
Gotcha.
So they really directed me very strongly to pursue my doctorate in clinical psych.
Was that the right advice to you at the time? Okay.
Yeah, right. I think so. Okay. Because what they said is you can always refer back to your learnings from pastoral counseling. That's always going to be with you. Yeah. But you need to go into clinical psych because you really need to learn the clinical psychology, you know, behind everything. Yeah. And then move from there. Okay. And so, yeah, it was great advice.
All right.
I'm glad I took it.
All right. So you went that direction. and you became Dr. Brewer.
Dr. Brewer.
All right. Okay. So then, what was your thinking for as far as what you're going to do with this new title and how you're going to serve the world?
Well, I mean, I always knew, like, so even before I finished my doctorate, I knew I wanted to have my own business. I want to have my own clinic.
Yeah.
Because, you learn from experiences, you learn from people.
Yeah.
And so that supervisor I was referring to before,
Yeah.
she was brilliant in terms of
Mm.
clinical expertise
Okay.
and what she offered in terms of supervision, taking care of self, all that stuff.
Yeah.
But from the business standpoint, not so great.
Yeah.
So I learned so much
Yeah.
in working for her about how I want to do things differently. And so I always knew I wanted to have my own practice like she had, but
Yeah.
from the business standpoint, I was going to do things differently to
Yeah.
treat people more fairly and equitably.
Mm.
So while I was pursuing my doctorate, I started by private practice.
All right.
And then when I completed my doctorate, I called upon people like students I'd been in class with to
Yeah.
come work with me.
Wow.
Or
Collaborative.
for me, rather.
Yeah.
And just kind of built from a small group to an outpatient mental health clinic, which is what we are now.
All right.
And we have like over 1,000 clients.
Wow.
That was 20 years ago.
Right.
And so now, within the past 5 years was another pivot
Yeah.
to psychedelics.
Wow, that's pretty impressive. So with so going into the business of mental health,
Yeah.
right? So, you think of, counseling. Well, actually, before we get to that, and we'll come back to that question, what's the difference between a therapist, a psychologist, and a psychiatrist?
So actually, I wanted to be a psychiatrist. It's interesting you mentioned that. When I was younger, I wanted to be a psychiatrist.
Okay.
Well, that's what I thought.
Yeah.
Because, so a psychiatrist is somebody who goes to med school, for one. And I
Okay.
didn't want to go to med school, which is why I
Gotcha.
said not doing that.
Yeah.
But they go to med school and they get specific training around pharmacology
Yeah.
and how the medicine affects the body.
Gotcha.
Not just the brain, but the body.
Yeah.
And they can prescribe medication.
Got you. Okay.
And most psychiatrists, but not all, but most will just prescribe medication and do the routine med management, although some do like the therapy and they'll combine the two.
Yeah.
But for the most part, psychiatrists are the ones who write the prescriptions
Yeah.
and they monitor the medications that you're on.
Okay.
Versus therapists, social workers, counselors, psychologists, they're more so the ones who engage in the talk therapy.
Okay.
At least from the outpatient mental health clinic world.
Okay.
'Cause then you have schools and other, different industries.
Yeah.
But from the outpatient mental health world, yeah, those are the major differences.
Got you.
Yeah.
And so the psychiatrists, they're prescribers.
They're prescribers, yep.
Okay. And then you have like therapists and clinical social workers, licensed social workers, and they can do therapy.
And psychologists and counselors. All
Okay.
of them, yeah. Would
But
more
it
so
seems
do
like the
therapy.
psychologists, you guys are there's a little extra esteem to that.
Is there?
Yeah,
I mean, social work too has got,
Yeah.
they're bump themselves up. I think everybody, all those professionals from the different fields, they have their level of expertise and their interest, but they can absolutely all do therapy
Gotcha.
across the board,
Yeah.
probably equivocally.
Yeah.
Psychologists can also do testing if
Yeah.
that's their kind of their line of specialization.
Yeah.
So you have that additional component to psychologists. They can do psychological testing for clients, and social workers are sometimes thought of being more community oriented, type of people.
Okay.
But they can definitely do therapy, and we have great social workers on our team, great therapists. Across the board.
Yeah. And so you opened the practice, began the process of finding an equitable model to hire and bring on and build a team. Been doing this for over 20 years.
Yeah.
Sounds like somewhere around that 17th year mark or something, you began looking at psychedelics. Okay. What was there? Talk to me. I want to hear about like how you came to the realization that this could be something that was beneficial, and what was the journey like to getting into offering that?
So, everything happens for a reason. Timing is everything,
Yeah.
right? in college, I experimented recreationally with different things
Yeah.
as a college kid,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
Most do.
We did. Yep. I did it as well. So.
And pastoral counseling tapped into religious and spiritual dimensions of healing, which I loved.
Yeah.
Then I moved to clinical psych because that was a smart thing to do.
Mm-hmm.
COVID hit. Mm-hmm. After COVID, people were withdrawn, they were anxious, they were nervous, including myself, right? We don't know what's going on in the world.
Yeah.
What's the bigger picture? We don't know. We don't even know if there's going to be tomorrow.
That's right.
When things quieted down a little bit, my family and I, my extended family and I, took a trip to Jamaica.
Okay.
That my 15-year-old daughter organized.
All right.
We paid for it. She organized it.
I love it.
But it was fabulous.
Yeah.
I don't know if it was because it was coming right off of COVID or maybe a combination of all of it, but also the actual experience that we had that she orchestrated for us. Mm-hmm. But it was an all-encompassing, almost a retreat-like vacation that we had, where we engage in all kinds of different activities, from somatic techniques and healing to just hanging out and going kayaking and jet skiing. But I came back from that feeling so rejuvenated, and I noticed the other people, how rejuvenated they were, that I thought, I want to bring this kind of experience to clients.
Wow.
I think they deserve that.
Yeah.
It's so healing. It was just so healing.
Yeah.
It was the setting, it was the techniques and modalities, it was the people, it was the energy there. And so I thought, I want to recreate this in the mental health context.
Yeah.
And also around that same time, one of my directors approached me and said, hey, there's an 8-week course at Harvard about psychedelics and mental health. Do you want to take it with me? Can we take it together? And can you sponsor it?
Yeah.
I said, yeah, sure, let's do that.
Yeah.
She was actually an old college buddy of mine.
Okay.
So I said, all right, let's do that. Yeah. And then we learned about all the different psychedelics in this 8-week program. Yeah. And it really took me back to pastoral counseling, about how psychedelics taps into spiritual healing. And there's something about it that really is so much deeper and so much more meaningful than the traditional modern way of trying to heal.
Yeah.
So it was taking that class, it was going on that vacation, where I just thought, I need to merge the two, to give people a really meaningful experience that will be more healing, in a deeper way. Yeah. Because people, they struggle with anxiety, depression for years and years and years. And
that's right.
Kind of never get there.
Yeah.
But it was really, really, it was the good timing. And then around that same time also, I was in the process of trying to network with others who were doing this, and I received an invitation to come to New York City to participate in a Clinicians of Color pilot study around psychedelics.
Wow. And
so I went and did that. I was scared because it was for ketamine, which I've never done before. And I was definitely scared before going into it. Yeah. But I thought, if this is the field I want to get into, I probably should try ketamine in a therapeutic way, just to see what it's like.
What was it like?
It was out of this world. It's very short acting, but we don't use ketamine because it's a synthetic drug, and I just don't believe in that. But it's very short acting, so it was about an hour. Okay. But it was a ride. It was like a takeoff. It was a quick takeoff. Yeah. But what I experienced was amazing in terms of, I experienced my father's presence. My father had died maybe 6 or 7 years before, and we didn't have a good relationship at all. But I experienced his presence in such a powerful way there, and his message to me in that journey was so impactful. But I heard his voice in that journey, and he said to me, you're going along the right path. You're going to learn so much about yourself and your history through what you're doing. Wow. And so it was very meaningful.
Wow. So, and I'm going to botch the name of it, but is it Ashvaka? Is that the? You're
talking about ayahuasca?
Ayahuasca. Okay. See, I told you I was going to botch it. Okay. So, we in the last number of years, we've heard, particularly I'm thinking Will Smith, and so many other Hollywood A-listers who have gone and said they've had these experiences with that one, right?
Ayahuasca, yeah.
Yeah. And so is this a similar trip? Um,
So ayahuasca. Okay, so we have ketamine.
uh-huh.
You have LSD, which is what everybody's heard about.
Yeah.
You have psilocybin, which is the
Hmm.
magic mushrooms, which
Yeah.
is what we work with,
Okay.
and then you have ayahuasca.
Yeah.
I mean, those are some of them.
Okay.
Ayahuasca is something that I personally would never
Okay.
try.
All right.
It's really far on that spectrum
They
in
say
terms
it's a
of the
really
intensity.
intense experience,
Yeah,
and it's like a couple days. So
it's intense.
and they're going down to Mexico or Peru,
Costa Rica or Peru,
Costa
yeah,
Rica,
and they're vomiting.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
I
and
hear, and they're
I
waking
don't.
up and they're covered in vomit. Yeah.
That's not my thing.
Okay. All right.
That's not my thing. Yeah, I prefer psilocybin because it's natural for one thing.
Okay.
It has the least amount of negative effects.
Okay.
And to me, it just really taps into your inner healing intelligence. Extremely powerful.
Wow.
And it's a very safe medicine to use.
Yeah.
And it just really taps into the spirituality, and you can make meaning out of your experience.
Got you.
Um,
Do with how long is a treatment?
for psilocybin?
Yeah.
So for psilocybin, typically a journey is 4 to 6 hours.
Okay.
It does depend on the person.
Okay.
4 to 6 hours is typical, though.
Is it done in a clinic, or is it something they do at home, or?
Well, we have the underground, right?
Okay.
So you have underground everywhere.
Right.
You have people who are finding it, distributing it,
Yeah.
having people come to their house and doing it in their house or by the lake.
Okay.
It's not legal, right?
It sounds like it. Yeah.
What we do is we take people to Jamaica, right? So we
Mm.
curate these unique, tailored retreats for the individuals who will be there, and we
Uh-huh.
do it in a safe, legal setting of Jamaica.
Okay.
And we have all these different modalities around the mushroom journey. So there are a
Mm.
lot of things that build up to that day of the journey, and
Yeah.
then a lot of things after the journey to help with them making meaning of what you went through. So, for example, when people come, on the first day, it's kind of, we're getting to know each other, checking in, that kind of stuff, and educating us around what we're going to be going through.
Yeah.
But we also introduce all of our clients to the medicine in an infused dinner.
Mm-hmm.
So that way it's a mini dose, and that way we get to understand and, observe how they metabolize the medicine.
Mm-hmm.
And, some people are ultra sensitive, some people aren't.
Yeah.
Because that helps us for the next day to know how much to give them.
Right. Understood.
Because we want people to go on a journey.
Yeah.
They're here for an experience.
Yeah.
We want them to heal, but we have to be careful about how much we're giving them.
Understood.
So,
Yeah. You so this process of spiritual healing,
mm-hmm.
it sounds so powerful.
Yeah.
It sounds like the type of thing that so many people seek
Mm-hmm.
through religion and
Mm-hmm.
through prayer. Many of us who grew up in religious households,
Mm-hmm.
Prayer was the answer to everything.
Yeah.
If it wasn't aspirin and prayer and fasting,
Mm-hmm.
That was really kind of the what encompassed spiritual healing for us, right?
Yeah.
Is waiting for God to deliver us.
Yeah.
Went from this spiritual journey. What are we tapping into? And is it safe?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting when you say that. It does take me back to when I was a kid, right? Everything's about prayer. You pray on it. You go to, you repent.
Right.
You take communion. You wash away your sins. Those
That's
kind of things, and everything stays in the home.
Yeah.
Right. That's very big.
That's right.
You don't talk.
That's
outside
right.
of home to anybody about what's going on.
Yeah.
This is different.
Yeah.
It's very different. It's about preparing people to be open.
Yeah.
It's preparing people and helping them to feel safe.
Mm-hmm.
Which is huge, especially in the Black brown community where, drugs, we can get targeted for that.
Yeah.
We don't necessarily feel safe saying we do these kind of things.
Yeah.
But, safety is a big concern. Community is a big concern. The setting is a big concern. But, if we are able, when we were able, right, to bring our clients to their retreats and help them to feel safe and comfortable and open to the experience before they go into it, what it does is the psilocybin will go into what we call the inner healing intelligence that we all have within us,
Wow. Okay.
which is the understanding that our body knows what it needs to heal, and there's not a disconnect from the body and the mind. These are not two separate things.
Yeah.
Everything is together.
Yeah.
And so if we're able to help people relax and be open and surrender to the experience, what psilocybin does, it's a mood amplifier. So it really amplifies all of your feelings and your emotions, but in a way that you can tolerate it.
Yeah.
And so you are really experiencing these medicines, as opposed to, these psychopharmacological drugs, which are like Band-Aids. You're not feeling anything.
Yeah.
Psilocybin is the opposite.
Wow.
So
Okay.
you are really feeling that depression. You're really feeling that anxiety, but you're able to feel it and surrender to it and have a new experience to it afterwards. So you're essentially you're elevating your level of consciousness because you're working through that low level of feeling to a higher positive feeling.
Yeah.
So then you're able to feel more joy. You're able to feel more altruistic. You're able to feel something outside of yourself and not get stuck in that guilt and that shame and that anger that you came with.
Gotcha. So with what are the average clients look like?
They really come from everywhere,
Okay.
honestly. I mean, every age. I mean, we only work with clients who are age 18 and up, but
Gotcha.
we've had clients in their early 20s. We've had clients in their 70s. We've had clients who come because they have post-COVID symptoms and rapid decline in terms of, what's going on in their brain. We've had clients who come who are just looking for, just greater spiritual awareness and understanding about what's going on, self-care and healing. And of course, we have therapists come because we have some therapist retreats. So we're training therapists, and we're also offering therapists this opportunity to let us help them. Let us take care of them.
Wow.
Because we don't have it that often.
Yeah, I love it. With in particular the Black and Brown community, you have marijuana and edibles, and there's a segment of the population that feels a sense of comfort with taking edibles or marijuana. And then there's this sense that anything else outside of that is really risky behavior, and is potentially, that you're at risk of like addiction and things like that. What should they be? What should our communities be aware of as it relates to the what you prescribe or what you guys do?
Marijuana, edibles, those are for the most part taken recreationally, and they're taken as an escape. Whereas what we're offering is, this is, you're asking what's the ideal client. The ideal client has to be somebody who wants to take things seriously, for one thing, right? So you're not coming here to escape. You're coming here to surrender and to grow and to elevate yourself above what you're experiencing. So, it's a very different philosophical approach or perspective, in that when you take psilocybin, you're coming for a deep level of healing. You're not coming to escape your problems. You're coming to face them, be open to them, and move through them and work through them. And I would not be doing this if it wasn't safe or legal, which is why I don't do this in the U.S. at all.
Understood.
We've never even touched that.
Yeah.
We do it in a place where it's legal. We curate a really safe space for people. My team is very diverse and multidisciplinary, and we have local Jamaicans on the team as well.
Wow. Okay.
Because we're in their country, we can't just come here and do this work and leave.
Yeah.
But we train local Jamaicans, and some local Jamaicans are on the team, and some Jamaicans are at the retreats. But I think it just really helps in terms of helping people feel more comfortable. With the diverse group of people who are there, personalities and everything. But this is something that is not for recreation. It's not just for fun. It's really about transformational healing and learning and elevating yourself. So you can tolerate daily life a lot better.
I love that. One of the ways in which we witness clients who are, really struggling with their mental health disorders. As you know, oftentimes it their challenges play out in that happen in life, right? So, you know, one of the things that we're always attempting to do is to get them to see things from a different perspective. I know that you can, I know you can relate to that, and it's kind of that whole sense of like you can't see the forest from the trees. Yeah. The psilocybin.
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 Yes, psilocybin.
So with psilocybin, and we're going to edit that part out. So with psilocybin,
Yes.
Being able to see the forest from the trees, like is that kind of a way in which the experience has like you're able to kind of get a different. It's almost like an outer body experience. Is that really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, you definitely have that. It absolutely does different things in your brain. So it increases neuroplasticity,
Oh, wow.
and that's a huge thing. And that's, I think, why right now, like the U.S. and the scientists are really trying to understand it a little better, because it absolutely does some different things in your brain. It changes the neural structures in your brain, it increases neural pathways in the brain. So you're able to think differently about things that you hadn't, in ways you hadn't before.
Wow.
So it gives you fresh perspectives and different perspectives.
Yeah.
You see things, you might see the beauty in something that you never even had, looked at before.
Yeah.
You notice things differently afterwards. But it absolutely changes the brain chemistry so that you're able to think differently, process things differently, and, ultimately it just leads to change.
Wow. Thinking of psilocybin, how long has it been used by human beings?
Oh, yeah, that's the thing. It's been around for centuries.
Okay.
So, that's a big part of our training is that, this is not anything we just made.
Yeah.
It's not something we created. It's not something we discovered, right?
Yeah.
It's been around for centuries.
Yeah.
It's been around, in Africa, in, parts of Egypt, Asia, all different areas it's been around. People used to use it in ceremony, indigenous people in ceremonies for just healing.
Yeah.
Even they used it with children. We have shaman healers from way back.
Yeah.
And that's kind of a big thing here in the United States too, is that, as they're looking to turn it into something that the FDA will approve, there is a lot of controversy about the indigenous healers being left behind, because this is where it came from.
Yeah.
And so it's important to honor that. We talk about that a lot during our training about like where this actually came from.
Yeah.
And the damage that was done in bringing it here to the United States and make it into a recreational drug in the way it is today. But, it's important to really still honor and respect where it came from, and for people who have lineage, to incorporate them in what we're doing. Yeah. That's super important too.
Yeah, I get that. I think one of the benefits of, when I was growing up, I guess this is the way I'll say it. When I was growing up, we had 5 channels, 7 channels. You had the major networks, and that's what you basically watched. And then, when I got into high school, cable became a much bigger way in which we watch TV. And over the course of the last 30 something years, you've got the Nat Geo and some of those shows, and so I think it's I'm a fan of Nat Geo, and there was this one show, and they were going around the world, and they were looking at indigenous life, and they were keying in. Well, this one episode I'm thinking about was keying in on the transition to adulthood and that rites of passage. And so one of the tasks that they had was this ceremony where these adolescent boys would put on these gloves, and the gloves had bullet ants in them. And I don't know if you know about bullet ants, but bullet ants have the most painful bite in all of the animal kingdom. And so, like, if you think of, like, say, a bee, I don't know if you've ever been stung by a bee. On the pain scale, it's like a 5 or a 4.
The bee.
Yeah. So you and I've had some good stings, so it felt like they were worse than that. But it was a 4. Bullet ants, they top the scale at 10. And so what they do is they go out, they hunt for the ants. They don't kill them. They bring them back. They put them in a solution which basically makes them drunk.
Oh,
And
boy.
then they're able to use that to weave them into the gloves.
Okay.
So when the ants waken, they're stuck in these gloves, and then the uh, the uh, the individuals who are going through the rites of passage put their hands in.
Mm.
And so and then they dance, and you could see them in excruciating pain.
Mm-hmm.
What's interesting is that from the bite, it takes about 24 to 36 hours for the pain to leave their bodies. But during the time, they're hallucinating, they're going through this tremendous experience.
Oh, wow.
But you don't just do it once.
Wow.
You do it like 16 times. So over the course of a couple years,
Wow.
you go through this series of experiences.
Hmm.
And of course, at first I was trying to figure out, like, why would they do something like this? And then I started to think about, someone being able to overcome pain.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if you've gone through that level of pain, if you've gone through that experience, I would not be motivated or I wouldn't be discouraged if in life I have to go through a difficult situation, because I've gone through that.
Yeah.
And so I bring that up because, thinking about psilocybin and how some of the older communities, the ancient communities, probably integrated it for wellness and for the health of the village or the community. I can only imagine, the benefits that happen.
Yeah.
But then to think that you guys are doing this in like Jamaica, which is paradise, right?
Yeah.
So you're eating some of the best foods and the ocean and the sun there. Like, can you describe a little bit? It might even be difficult. Can you describe a little bit of what that experience feels like?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's interesting you brought that up, because that speaks a lot to me too in terms of pastoral counseling.
Yeah.
When I was in that program, I learned about Viktor Frankl and A Man's Search for Meaning, the book he wrote about psychic suffering, and how there are lessons to be learned in psychic suffering, and how people who go through psychic suffering are able to elevate themselves in terms of, if I can handle this, I can handle anything. Not to say we want difficult, challenging, traumatic experiences to happen to us, but those of us who go through them, we generally, as long as we have the right support and the right perspective and support, I think is a big part of it, come out of it stronger. And so, when you ask about what's a retreat experience like, it is essentially we're trying to bring you to a place that looks like paradise and it feels like paradise. So it feels very complete and nurturing and supportive and comfortable, because we're preparing you for an uncomfortable experience. A psilocybin journey is like a controlled breakdown. You have ego dissolution, you have ego death. A lot of people will experience themselves dying. There's a loss of sense of yourself, but you have all the feelings and all the emotions. But it's like an emotional roller coaster. For a lot of people, it's a lot of crying, a lot of emoting, but that's so healing at the end. But, they may be grieving things they didn't realize they needed to grieve, but it's really deep internal, whatever that deep internal stuff that we have that we need to grapple with, that's what it's tapping into. So it's an emotional roller coaster. It's tiring, it's draining, but it's so cathartic, it's so healing, and it's so cleansing afterwards.
What's the time of recovery? So once a person goes through that 4 to 6 hours, the experience, how long is it before they're ready to head back home and get back to?
We don't send them home for another 2 days.
Okay.
Right. So that's one thing. We keep you here.
Right.
Because there's a lot that has to happen after. So, when we have those mushroom journey experiences, we're taking up the majority of the day. And then afterwards, everybody's a little bit different. So we are flexible. We're letting some people come and rejoin the group. Some people just want to sit by themselves, maybe be by the water, experience the earth in a new way.
Mm-hmm.
So for some people, it's a one-on-one. For
Mm-hmm.
some people, they want to get back with the group and re-experience what's going on.
Yeah.
But we let them like gently settle back in afterwards through the
Mm.
evening, and then come to the dinner and join together. And after dinner, we have fire. We have a fire pit, and we kind of dance around the fire pit because
I
all
love
of
it.
that stuff
Yeah.
is, you know, you want to get out of your head into your body.
Yes, right.
And then we keep them for another 2 days.
I love it. Yeah.
So we're doing massages, we're doing chakra rebalancing,
Yeah.
we're doing some crystal ceremonies, we're offering nature-based excursions, just a lot of different somatic modalities
Yeah.
to help to incorporate, you know, what they experience and also make meaning out of their experiences.
Yeah.
So we're also journaling. You know, we're asking them to journal, but we're also journaling on parts of staff in terms of what they experience, you know,
Yeah.
so what we witnessed, what we heard, so we can help them to make meaning of it
Yeah.
afterwards.
There's in '95, um, you know, I was a young man, college age, and I had a probably one of the worst years um, in my life. It's just a lot of things broke down for me, and I felt like a really wounded person. And I ended up praying one day and asking. I said, you know, God, I just need a break from where I am. I feel like the walls are closing in on me. And literally like 15 minutes later, my phone rings, and it is at the time my best friend's father calling me, and he says to me, he says, you know, your friend has an opportunity to go to Zimbabwe, and uh, he doesn't want to go. And so I say, well, sir, what's it about? He says, well, you know, there's a guy who works for my company, and his church is sponsoring a trip for Americans to go to Zimbabwe and help build housing.
Wow.
And it's about a 3-week trip, you know, almost a month. You know, but you know, and I talked to him, and he's not interested. And he said, and I said, okay. I said, but you know, I really don't have. I'd love to go. I would love to go, but I don't have the resources. He said, well, I'll tell you what. If you can convince him to go, then I'll pay for your trip.
Wow.
So I called my home, and I was like, man, we are going, because we both were kind of going through the same thing. You know, 23 years old, trying to figure out life in that stuck place. You know, stuck in school and things not working out. And so I convinced him. I was like, we're going.
Wow.
And so we ended up, while we were there, because what people might not know is in this part of my life, I had really gotten into music.
Okay.
You know, and it was really kind of an outlet, so a therapeutic activity for me. You know, and I needed it to be able to tap into areas and not overthink certain things.
Yeah.
And so, and I didn't realize at the time what I was actually going through was grief and some survivor's remorse. I had a couple friends who had lost their lives, you know, and so saying all that to say, so we go to Zimbabwe, and it became this like spiritual journey of like me trying to find myself, and along with my friend, we were trying to find ourselves. And the highlight of the trip was we got introduced to this guy who was from there, and he said, you know what, we know these very powerful healers and magicians that live about a day's drive away.
Wow.
And so we made the determination that we were going to take this drive, you know. And so we went to an area called Chipinge, Zimbabwe. And so we met this guy. We called him Papa San. And he was a healer. And he was respected, like literally people days away would come to see him.
Wow.
And so we had to negotiate for him to work with us, and for the village to put on like a drumming session and create this healing session. And they drummed and danced through the entire night. And they invited in like the warrior spirits, which was a certain type of drumming and dancing. And then they invited in the virgin spirits, and then they were like, they didn't want to invite in the wilderness spirits because they said a lot of wild and crazy things can happen during that. So they decided they weren't going to do that one. But it was such a remarkable experience, and yeah, they had, we had libation, so we did have like a drink that we had, an alcohol, and then they had made like a millet beer, and then they had traditional marijuana. So it was a trippy trip. But then afterwards in the morning, we went down to his. It was, we were in like mud huts, like dirt floors, like it was the real deal, right? And so we went into his, and he had all of these medicines.
Okay.
And he looks at me and he says, I can see that you're dealing with something in your lungs. And he said, I'm going to give you this. And he gave us these various medicines. And I ended up taking them back and using them. And I felt empowered. I felt healed.
Wow.
And listening to what you're doing, and the experience and your knowledge and your expertise around it, the experience that you're creating, I'm hearing that you're like a modern day healer. Like you're almost like a clinically educated shaman. Do you see yourself that same way?
No,
Okay.
no. I mean, because I think, and I do accept the healer.
Okay.
That's
Yeah.
definitely, that's always the intention.
Yeah.
Being a healer, and we're all healers in different ways.
Yeah.
And we are very intentional about, we take the time, to figure out how to craft a experience that's unique to who's coming, and even when people get there, who are these people showing up, and how do we need to be present to them. So I think we do really good work. I really do, because we take our time and we really care about what we're doing, and people leave feeling like, wow.
Okay.
I would love to meet a shaman one day.
Yeah.
I really would.
Yeah.
Because when you say shaman, it just makes me think of the indigenous healer.
Yeah.
And I would say I've met a couple people who have that kind of extra sense, and they can tap into what needs to be healed in the body. I met a couple people like that, and it's very intriguing.
Yeah.
But I do also know we're all moving along our journey in different ways, and who knows, where we'll end up.
That's right.
But I'm very interested in this field, and especially because of, I feel the energy is so important, and the energy is very healing.
That's right.
Between people.
That's right.
And so, even just being here today, I'm glad this is not virtual, because I think the energy and the interaction it plays a huge part.
Creates 1 + 1 = 3. Yeah.
Exactly.
So for those who are interested in finding you, and so you mentioned that you have an event that's coming up. You have an experience.
Yeah.
So when's the date, and how can they sign up? How can they can get information about it? Yeah.
So as I mentioned earlier, so I have my outpatient mental health clinic, which is MPB Group.
Yep.
So you can, if anyone's interested in therapy, they could go to www.mpbhealth.com. But Healing Escapes is a separate company of mine.
Okay, gotcha.
And so Healing Escapes is the retreat side of things.
Yeah.
And so we do have a website there. We're also on Instagram and Facebook. And we did a live a couple weeks ago about our couples retreat, which is coming up next month in Jamaica. And so the couples retreat is going to be April 17th to the 21st. The retreats are generally over a weekend, a long weekend. And then after that, we're going to have a spa wellness retreat in June.
Okay.
And we're also going to have a therapist retreat in August.
Wow.
And an addictions retreat as well.
Excellent.
Because psychedelics does really tap into addictions and really help to kind of get to what's underneath that to help people like raise up into their levels of consciousness and beyond. But to read about the retreats, they can just go to www.healingescapesfoundation.org.
Yeah.
And then they'll find information. So.
All right. This has been a fantastic discussion. I've learned a ton, and I am looking forward to it. To be honest with you, I think Kristen and I are going to, not only just follow your work, but I think we're going to attend some of your events. So
that'll be wonderful.
Really excited about what you're doing for the community. Your clinics, you have one that's in Bowie. And one that's in Columbia. So for those of you who are looking for outpatient mental health services, certainly look her up.
Thank you.
Dr. Brewer, thank you for coming in.
Thank you.
Really excited about the possibilities of the work that you're doing.
Yeah, this is very good work. Thank you for having me.
All right, thank you. All right, so long, guys. All right.